Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're going to go ahead and make this really cool sci-fi shield for your games, animations, videos, whatever you guys want to use it for, or just learn the texture. So let's go ahead and get right into this thing without further ado. We're going to be using Blender version 4.1 today. This will work in later versions of Blender, however, it does work slightly different. If you guys encounter problems, go ahead and hit me up in the comments and I'll do my best to answer your questions. There's going to be a couple things we need to actually go ahead and get this thing started. So A, you're going to need some sort of base for your shield, and B, you're going to need the actual shield model itself that we can go ahead and color. So as far as the base goes, you guys can try to replicate something I did in my intro video, but for the sake of this tutorial, to keep it quick, I'm just going to model something super duper fast, and it is not going to be very pretty. And let's just pull those back, and there you go. It's that's as good as you're going to get right now. Some sort of something. You guys can feel free to pause it, model whatever you'd like, and then go ahead and unpause this video to get started on the force field part itself. So let's go ahead and do that. In object mode, we're going to create a new object, and I will have screencast keys on the bottom. First things first, Shift-A, Mesh, and add in a plane. We're going to rotate it on the X-axis by 90 degrees, G and grab it up. We're going to go over to the Modifiers tab, add a modifier, and we're going to add a Generate and Subdivision Surface modifier. I'm going to go ahead and pump up the levels on that. Tab back into edit mode, and then you guys can go ahead and just add loop cuts with Control R until you like the shape that you end up with. The more loop cuts you have, the more tight and kind of angular the shield's going to be. So if you want a really angular shield, if you want a really angular shield, go ahead and do that. But I like them kind of swoopy and a little bit more organic, I suppose you could call it. So that is what I'm going to do. But as the artists, feel free to do whatever you want. I'm not really going super hard here on the looks. Again, you guys, if you're looking for shading tutorials, things like that, then you're probably pretty decent at basic models already. So feel free to create your model and then jump back into this. So here is my shield model, just kind of a moved, stretched plane. We can go ahead and right click, convert to mesh, just to apply all the modifiers in a stack. Even though we had one, that's a nice little trick to know. So if you tab back in edit mode, this is what our mesh looks like. You can clean it up, whatever you want to do to it, but let's go ahead and jump into this shading now. I'm going to go ahead and pull up this bottom tab. We're here on the timeline drop down. I'm going to drop that down, and I'm going to go to the shader editor. Hit new. You guys can name it whatever you want. I'm just going to name it SH for shield because I'm lazy. Okie dokie. So we're going to need quite a few things. So I'm going to try to go through this tutorial relatively quickly. Hopefully not too fast. Again, my screencast keys are on down here in the bottom right hand corner in case I miss something. And just feel free to pause the video as much as you need. Slow it down. Whatever you need to do. It's quite a decent sized shading tree here. So I'm going to try to go through it relatively speedily here. So let's go ahead and grab the principal BSDF and destroy it. We're going to go ahead and Shift-A and add in a Mix shader node. I'm going to plug that into the surface right there. Let's go ahead and go into material preview mode. Go down to the material menu right here within your settings. Scroll down until you see blend mode where it says opaque. Click that drop down and select alpha blend. And right where it says opaque under shadow, go ahead and select none. So I'm going to go ahead and Shift-A and search for transparent BSDF. I'm going to go ahead and plug that transparent into the bottom of the mix shader. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and Shift-A and look for a translucent node. We're going to go ahead and plug that translucent into the bottom of this mix shader. We're going to go ahead and Shift-A and we're going to look for a emission node. We're going to plug that into the top of the mix shader. For the factor or the mask of this mix shader, we're going to Shift-A, look for an invert color node, plug that into the factor, and Shift-A, a color ramp node. And we're going to go ahead and plug that in to the color of the invert color. Okay, so for this shader, the first thing I'm going to go ahead and want to do is create the kind of energy, pattern going on that's looks like kind of broken up energy web sort of in the shield. Okay, so that is the first thing I'm going to go ahead and create here. In order to do so, click on this white shader on this color ramp and change it to whatever color you want. Let's go with a purple color this time. You can choose whatever you wish to choose. I'm going to slide it in real close to the black. Slider, Shift A, look for a math node and change the add to subtract. I'm going to go ahead and plug that in to the factor of your color ramp. Shift A and search for a Voronoi texture. And we're going to plug the distance into the bottom value here. And we're going to Shift D, that Voronoi texture. Plug that distance into the top value of the subtract node. Now on this top Voronoi, we're going to go ahead and change it from F1 to smooth F1. And we're going to go ahead and leave the bottom one just on regular F1. Kind of already start to see the effect happen here, except the webbing is really large. We're going to want to thin that down. So let's go ahead and do that. If you do not have Node Wrangler enabled, go ahead and go to Edit, Preferences, and under Add-ons, you can search for Node, and then you'll see Node Wrangler right here. You can go ahead and check that box, save your preferences, and exit out of that. Once you have Node Wrangler enabled, you can click on either the top or the bottom Voronoi and hit Control T, and you'll get a texture coordinate and mapping node. You could also just Shift A, look for texture, coordinate, and mapping nodes and hook them up as seen here, but it's a really handy add-on to have enabled all the time. It just makes life a lot easier for many things, not just this, but this is what we're using it for today. Okay, so we're also going to plug that vector of the mapping node into the bottom vector of the Voronoi node as well, so it's following the same texture coordinate and mapping. We're going to change the texture coordinate from generated to object into vector of the mapping. And now you can really start to see it take effect here, right? I mean, it's still way too big, but this is much closer to what we want. So now we're going to go ahead and mess with all these factors. Now the kicker is you have to, because we're basically overlaying this Voronoi with this Voronoi and mixing them together with a subtract node. So you can see I can control this Voronoi separately, right? Well, we want them to be right over each other essentially, but not quite. So in order to do that, you're going to have to change, like, say every time you want to change a scale from 5 or, 5, right? And then you'd have to change it to 8 and 8. You just keep having to do that over and over. It gets really annoying for every single one of these options. So we're just going to make it much simpler. We're going to Shift A and search for a value node here. You can just plug this value node into the scale of the top and the bottom Voronoi, and now you can control both of them at once. It's far more convenient. I'm going to change that scale to 2. I'm also going to Shift D this value node, and I'm going to change both Voronois to 4D, 3D to 4D, 3D to 4D, and I'm going to plug this value into the W slot for both the top and the bottom. You can rename them if you wish, so if you select the node you want to rename so it's highlighted, right-click, rename, and I'm going to name it W. And this one I'm going to rename Scale, just so they're easier to identify and, a bit quicker, right? So now this color ramp will control, as you can see, the amount that is basically how thin it gets, right? So you can see that that makes it pretty thin. It's already looking pretty neat. I'm going to Shift D one more of these, and I'm going to rename it to Smooth, and I'm going to plug that into the luminosity, however you want to say that. I have no idea. Lunarity. Sure, you're going to plug it into that one, just so it has the same value attached to it all the time. And I'm going to change it to a value of something really, really low, 0.1, something along those lines for now. Just keep it the same. You don't have to do that step. You can just change them both to 0.1 and call it a day, but it's a little quicker and easier for me. Okay, so that is that first portion done. And let's add on to this now. So if we pull this material output out a little bit so we have some space here, I'm going to Shift A and look for Shader 2 RGB node. We're going to plug that in right here. Go ahead and slap on an HDRI, and I'm going to go to Film and Tick Transparent so we don't see it. I just want the lighting. Okay, so after you add your shader to RGB node, we will circle back around to that. Go ahead and plug the color of your color ramp into the emission color to give it some color. Now you can play with your sliders until you get kind of a size you like on the texture, size you like on that, and turn up the strength of it. All right, so I did make one little mistake right back here with the Voronoi textures on this top one where I made the smoothness value node. We're gonna go ahead and plug the smoothness from this node here into smooth. We're gonna go ahead and leave it on this node down here, right here above random, and we're gonna plug it into smoothness on the smooth F1. My mistake. Okay, and now you can go ahead and control how much or how little of those little cracks appear there. Turn up the emission strength a bit, and there you go. That's pretty neat. All right, so now you have your little crags, electric power bits here. Let's go ahead and animate them slightly. So under the W value here, we're gonna go ahead and type in hashtag frame and divided by, let's go with 50 for now and hit space to play it. I think that looks pretty good. Feel free to play with the scale to your heart's content if you want it really ridiculously crazy like static or less, but I like it exactly where it's at. So now we can go ahead and Shift D this mix shader and drop it right after the shader to RGB. We're going to Shift A and look for a transparent BSDF and plug that in to where the shader to RGB was and just go ahead and move that to the bottom slot. We're also going to plug the shader to RGB color into the factor of that mix shader. To animate it now, we're going to go ahead and see how the location moves it, right? So we're going to go ahead and under Y, type hashtag frame divided by 60. Okay, let's go a little faster and do 25. That's pretty good. And if you click on it again, go just before frame, hit minus. So it says minus frame divided by 25, and it'll go upwards. You do have to do it like that. If you type in minus frame to begin with, it won't work. You have to type in hashtag frame divided by 25, go back and type minus before it, and it will work. So now we have that animated and going upwards. Beautiful, looks wonderful. To change the color of the little electrical bits there, you can go ahead and always change this color to whatever you prefer. If you want like gold or green, whatever you guys want. We're just doing a purple for now because that's the color I chose for the tutorial. Alrighty, so now we're gonna go ahead and tackle those electrical bits on the inside. So if you just Shift D this mix shader and put it in front of that mix shader, we're going to Shift A, emission, and plug it into there. Let's just change it to a purpley color for now. Turn it up a bit, not too much, let's go 6 for now. We can come back and mess with that a little bit later. Let's Shift A and add in a mix color node here. Plug the result into the factor of that mix shader we just added. And we're going to go ahead and Shift A, look for a gradient texture and plug that into the factor of that mix color. Shift A, color ramp to give a little bit more control. We're going to flip the sliders on this color ramp. I'm going to change linear to easing. We're going to click on that and Control T for texture coordinate and mapping node. We're going to change the texture coordinate to object to vector and hit Control Shift click on this color ramp so we can see exactly what we need to here. And what we want is we want the white up top and the black part down below. So let's go ahead and do that. Y, let's probably rotate that by about 90 degrees. Okay, yeah, that looks pretty good. And the Z, yeah, about 45 degrees, give or take. I think that also looks pretty good. You can move the location of it up or down as well, just slightly. Yeah, move it down a little bit. We're gonna go ahead and change this color ramp we added into a B-spline. So it has a nice fade. B-spline's like a really soft gradient between whatever colors you have here, in this case white and black. Somewhere around there should look pretty good. Let's select all these nodes, move them up. Select all these nodes we just did, Shift D them down, delete this gradient texture, Shift A and add in a noise texture. Not that one. Add in a noise texture. vector to vector, and color to factor. We're gonna plug this color ramp into slot A here on the mix color node. And then below that, we're gonna go ahead and Shift A, transparent BSDF, and just Shift D this shader to RGB, and plug that into slot B. So now we can go ahead and Control Shift click on your end mix shader here, and you can see the effect it has. So what we did is we essentially put in another mask over the shield with the noise texture. As you can see, that is a noise texture. And we faded it with this color ramp. So that's gonna be the fade to stronger color down here, less color up here. That's generally how I make fire, things like that. Pretty simple little setup. This is your actual color of the noise, so you can turn up the strength of that, turn down the strength of that, whatever you guys prefer to do. I'm gonna leave mine at about 8, 9, somewhere around there. Now we're going to animate this one, of course, so let's change 3D to 4D on that noise texture we added in. And under W, you guessed it, type hashtag frame divided by 30 without cap locks on. Okay, so now that is being animated. And we can move its location as well on the y-axis, just like last time. Hashtag frame divided by 30 or 40, something like that, and then go back in and type minus before it all to reverse its flow. Change this bottom color ramp from B-spline to linear, and you'll go to harsher transition, just like that. So under location X, hashtag frame divided by 30, and go back in, type minus, play it, you'll see it's going down. No minus, and it'll go up. And we can go ahead and make it 20, something a little faster. I think that looks pretty good. Pretty good. And then under the fade here, we can play with that. So move your white slider here till it fades off. If you have it all the way to the end, it'll go all the way to the top, but fade out a little. If you move it in, it will control how much is actually seen. Around there is not bad. So this transparent down here, okay, so the second mix shader in from the material output, if you play with this one, you know, the lighter color, the more translucent it'll be, the darker color, the darker it'll be. I'm gonna kind of make it slightly lighter because it is a shield, right? You wanna be able to essentially see through it, which we can. So there's really only a few things left. One tiny little node tree to add here at the bottom, at the end, and that should be pretty much the entire thing after we add that. So bear with me for a moment. We are going to, right here at this transparent here, the second node tree in, this is the one that controls the actual shaded color of it, which is what we're gonna want. We're gonna wanna put like a little clear spot sort of in the center like most video game shields have. Anime shields, video game shields, whatever. We are going to Shift D this transparent node, and we're gonna Shift D this mix shader node, and drop it in right there. We're gonna go ahead and plug this transparent into the bottom portion of it. We'll give this one a slightly lighter color, and you will see why in a moment. I'll make it really light here, and we can change it afterwards. Shift A, add in a color ramp. Plug the color into the factor. We're gonna start the mask here, because it is, of course, just another mask. Shift A, gradient texture, and we're going to plug that into the factor, color into factor, and Control T on that. We're going to go ahead and change linear to quadratic sphere, and Control Shift click on this color ramp so you can get the actual mask. We're going to flip the black and the white here because we want the black's going to be phased out essentially, and the white is going to be the one that shows. So we'll just kind of adjust them roughly like that. Let's move the location. I think that's going to look probably pretty good. And then we can go ahead and plug this back in. Okay, so now you can see what it's done. We have like a darker purple tint on the outside and a lighter purple tint on the inside. If you change this to another color, you can really see the effect, right? So I'll go ahead and play with those. So there you go. There is mostly the shield done. I added a few little tidbits. You know, I added modifier, add modifier. You can do a deform, displace, hit new. From image or movie, change it to clouds, go back to the modifier, mess with the strength a little bit. And under normal, we're going to switch that to Y. And then where it says local, you can change that to object. And then you can just add in an empty planes axis. And I drop the planes axis. And then you can go ahead and location frame divided by 40. There you go. So now you have a little bit of rippling going on in your shield if you guys like that effect. If you don't want that effect, you don't have to add it in. You can just totally get rid of it and have it be solid. You can make it more pronounced for whatever reason, less pronounced. There's multiple different things you can do. You can also change it from like clouds to magic. That looks pretty cool. Tons of different options you guys can mess with. I'm going to leave it on clouds just because I like clouds, I guess. We essentially layered the electrical looking stuff, the bottom energy looking stuff coming out of the shield, basically the part that yeets it out, and the mask for the lighter to darker on the actual shield part itself. So that's the effect done. Play with all your colors, play with all these settings until you get something that you specifically want. If you like this, then use this. Thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you guys learned something. If you did, consider subscribing to my channel so you don't miss an episode. Have a nice day.